But so, Sean, let's transition to another thing, which I think is a little bit more controversial, and I think we're going to be talking about quite a bit going forward, and that is this issue of kind of hate speech versus free speech. Obviously, JD Vance yesterday hosted the podcast. Several administration figures appeared on the podcast to kind of add their voice. Stephen Miller was the most, I think, made the most news on that front. But, I mentioned that there are kind of these alternate universes right now that on the left, yes, obviously there's mentions in the New York Times and other places of the Charlie Kirk case, but other news is kind of moving up. And if you watch, MSNBC at night, and they're kind of, I don't want to say moving on, but other issues are getting, a play. If you turn on Fox News, conservative media, it is still largely 90% on Charlie Kirk. And the administration seems that their message here in terms of this crackdown that I guess is coming is going to be to go after hate speech. Yeah. And, for a lot of Democrats, they sit there and they, their jaws drop that, they are now it's all being talked about as hate speech when the conservatives, after January 6th and other things, this is what Democrats were talking about. We got to get rid of them. We have to go after them. And the administration seems aware of this because you're hearing figures say, no, that hate speech was different than this hate speech. What are your thoughts on it? Because one of the things that I see is there's a chance to overplay your hand and turn people off and have your own cancel culture where people get completely, turned off, that this looks like a out of control jihad almost. But what are your thoughts?
It's interesting. I'm not a big fan of trying to evoke January 6th as a topic, but since you went there, the thing that was interesting is that I think Democrats and the left jumped the shark on January 6th when they started depriving people of basic rights. There are people that did bad things, and then when you say, "Great, we're not going to allow you to talk to a lawyer. We're not going to," it's like, wait, so now you're going to go that far that you're going to deprive people of basic civil rights, constitutional rights, and they lost the narrative. What Liz Cheney and others did on that committee was take an issue that probably could have galvanized a lot of people because of the support of the mainstream media, and they went way too far. And to your point on this issue, and this is where I agree that we've got to be careful. I got asked about this earlier this morning because they said, based on what Attorney General Bondi said, there is a big difference. Politico this morning in their playbook said, I guess cancel culture is now, I forgot their words, back or whatever. The left canceled the right for existing, for its mere just having an opposing view, for believing in conservative principles, for supporting Donald Trump or the MAGA America First agenda. Literally said you can't exist because you do that. We will get rid of your job. We will come after you. We'll dox you. That's not free speech. When you go after somebody because they cheer the assassination of another citizen or violence to them, that's different. The Supreme Court has been clear on that. So as long as we stay on the right side of the court, where the court has very clearly said yelling fire in a crowded theater is not free speech, we're okay. But we've got to, I think, stay on that line that says if you advocate for the violence of another citizen against another citizen or the assassination thereof, that's different. Now you're repeating on and where the media, the politicos and others get this wrong is canceling somebody or going after them. And again, we're not canceling them, but I think exposing, if you want to go on social media and say, I cheer the death or murder of an innocent civilian, then I do think it's fair enough for me to say, great, I'll let your employer know if that's acceptable. I have no problem with that. If I say that, call it out. But I think there's a difference because what was happening to the right is people were calling up, their corporate thing and saying, did you know they support Donald Trump? Did you know that they are a MAGA supporter? Did you know they attended a Trump rally? That's very different. And I think that as long as we stay on the right side of that, we're okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, right? Because to your point, where you have evidence that somebody supports violence or an assassination or harming, throwing rocks through windows or something that is like real violence, then I think you're right. The American people are on that side. The vast majority, it's an 80-20 issue. Nobody supports that. I think where somebody says, hey, I didn't like Charlie Kirk, right? I didn't like his politics. I didn't like some of the controversial stuff he said, and you could put in Donald Trump's name, right? Immigration or like whatever your issue is. And people say, oh my God, that is, and some administration officials have talked about this issue, I think, in very loose ways. I think they probably mean, Sean, what you're saying, but the politics of this looking forward, I think Republicans are going to have to be really careful, because Democrats and the media will look to pounce when they see overreach. And I think that's going to be, all's fair in love and war here a little bit. Republicans are going to have to be careful. And Trump's history is to go big, to go bold.
Well, and that's why I said, I think we have to tread carefully on this, because there is a difference. I will say the one other thing that's in the mind of a lot of people on the right is that during the BLM riots, there was violence, vandalism, destruction that was excused. It's okay because it's in advance.
Yeah, we talked about this.
Good.
Yep.
And we cannot do that, because I want to maintain the higher ground on this and say, you know what? Again, you're right, Dan. If you don't like somebody, if you don't like their policy, that's I've said this before and I'll say it again. The beauty of the First Amendment is you have to be willing to defend that of which you abhor, which you hate. But I hate a lot of policies. I hate a lot of, political speech, but I'll defend it. But I will not defend the violence against another innocent civilian.
Absolutely.
So that's the line that, as long as we're on good on. But where I think the difference between the right and the left is right now is that we watched a series of left-wing officials and media personalities defend violence and destruction in the name of what they deemed the greater good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we'll have to see. I think the White House does seem sensitive to some of this stuff. I know Trump kind of made the comment about after the Minnesota shooting that he didn't lower the flag because he wasn't asked. Like, I think the White House is aware that some of the stuff the mirrors are being held up, and they need to try to get ahead of this.
Want more great clips like that? I've got an idea. Hit the subscribe button, be part of the Two-Way community, never miss a clip. And you can always watch our full episodes, join them live, go to twoway.tv.